Good afternoon. Welcome to the Analyst. Today we'll be taking up 7 newspaper articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express and discussing them. The handout for the same will be available in the description of this video for your kind perusal. Please have a look at that. The first article that we'll take up is related to population census, as there are calls for no further delay in the census since the beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act are still being identified using the 2011 census. The second article is related to India-France relations, as Prime Minister Modi is on a visit to Paris as the co-chair of the Artificial Intelligence Summit. Additionally, we'll take up 5 articles in the simplified, which will help you in your prelims and mains preparation. Now, the first article is related to the population census. The last census was conducted in 2011. Then it was supposed to be conducted in 2021, but it was postponed due to COVID. Now there are calls that there should not be any further delay in the conducting of census, since the census data is used for the targeted delivery of the government welfare programs also. For example, the beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act are identified using the census data, and we are still using the 2011 census data, which leads to exclusion errors. That is, some of the genuine beneficiaries are excluded, they are not getting the deserved benefit. Therefore, we'll discuss the need for the conducting of census and the implications of delay in the conducting of census. This is important in GS2 under the topic Government Policies and Interventions for Development in Various Sectors. First, let's look at the historical background. Did we conduct the census earlier also? Yes, it finds a mention in the Kautilyan Arthashastra as well. During the Kautilyan times, the population statistics were compiled and it was used especially for the formation of the state policy in the taxation matters. During the times of Akbar as well, an administrative report was prepared, An-e Akbari, which was prepared using the data related to population, industry, the wealth of people, etc. Likewise, the British also collected data. During the pre-independence era, James Prinsep conducted census in Allahabad and Banaras. The first non-synchronous census was conducted in India by Lord Mayo in 1872, whereas the first synchronous census in India was conducted by the Census Commissioner W.C. Plowden in 1881. That is the first comprehensive census in India. And the census is usually done in 2 phases. That is, it consists of a house-to-house survey and the population enumeration. And it is treated as the most credible source of data. The information related to demography, education, housing and household amenities, urbanization, fertility, etc. And the programs, the welfare programs of the government, the subsidies that the government gives, the policies for food distribution, education, sample selection for housing, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, etc. They all derive data from the census. Now, let's also understand the distinction between a few terms: census, National Population Register, and the National Register of Indian Citizens. The census is a detailed questionnaire. It collects the demographic data related to age, sex, marital status, number of children, occupation, birthplace, mother tongue, you belong to which religion, whether you have a disability or not, whether you belong to scheduled caste or scheduled tribe or not, etc. And it has a legal basis. It has a statutory backing in the form of Census Act 1948. The Act of 1948 empowers the central government to collect the data, and Section 4A of the Census Act 1948 explicitly makes the center in charge of collecting the data, and the states have to provide the staff when it is needed for the collection of the data in the preparation of the census by the central government. Whereas the National Population Register, it is containing the details of the residents of the country. That is, it has a database containing a list of the usual residents. The usual residents are those people who are residing in a place for 6 months or more, and they intend to stay at that place for another 6 months or more. They are treated as the usual residents. And therefore, the National Population Register, it contains only the basic demographic data, and the biometric particulars are collected. Why do we prepare the National Population Register? The objective behind it is to prepare a database which contains the comprehensive identity database of the people who are residing in a region, And how is it prepared? It is prepared through the house-to-house enumeration only. That is the house listing phase of the census that helps in the preparation of the National Population Register. Does it have a statutory backing? It does not find a mention in the Census Act 1948. Rather, the National Population Register is prepared because the mechanism is outlined through a set of rules which have been framed under the Citizenship Act 1955. Therefore, it will act as the first step towards the formation of the National Register of Indian Citizens. The National Register of the Indian Citizens will be the subset of the National Population Register, because the National Population Register is the database of all the people residing in the country, whereas the National Register of Indian Citizens will contain the data of only those who are Indian citizens. And the citizenship that is verified and scrutinized by the local authorities, that is the local registrar. Now, how is it done? It has been done through the Section 14A. The Section 14A was inserted into the Citizenship Act in 2004. Through the Section 14A, compulsorily every citizen of India has to be registered. The compulsory registration of every citizen of India has to be done, and they have to be provided with a national identity card. This national identity card will be the proof of the Indian citizenship, and the Registrar General of India will be acting as the National Registration Authority. Now, what will be the process of the National Register of Indian Citizens? First, there will be the house listing. This will be done through the census only, the house listing phase of census. Then there will be the biometric data collection. This biometric data collection will ensure that there is no duplication of the entries, there is no duplication of the identities in terms of citizenship. It will be given in the open for the public to give their claims or raise their objections. It will be verified and appeals can be filed against the decisions on the objections. And then it will be finalized. That is, it will be distinguishing between the citizens and the non-citizens. And finally, the identity cards will be issued. These identity cards, they will serve as the proof of citizenship. The National Population Register is not a proof of citizenship. Now, what will be the benefits of the National Register of Indian Citizens? One, it will ensure a national security. For example, in Assam, the National Register of Citizens was prepared. It was prepared in 2019, and through the National Register of the Citizens, we'll be able to identify the illegal immigrants. If we are able to identify the illegal immigrants, we can deport them, or at least we can put them on watch so that any illegal activities can be monitored closely. Plus, the National Register of Indian Citizens will reduce the identity fraud. It will reduce the duplication of the identities, and it will ensure that the welfare programs, they are better targeted. For example, the National Food Security Act, the beneficiaries under that, there are no exclusion errors. At the same time, there should not be any ghost beneficiaries as well. But there are certain challenges with respect to the implementation of the National Register of Indian Citizens. One, there will be exclusion concerns still, because there are quite a few people who have limited or no documents available with them to verify, to prove their citizenship of India. Therefore, there will be exclusions from the National Register of Indian Citizens unless there are documentary proofs. Likewise, the verification of citizenship, this will be a complex process and it will be a long, tedious process. The public also has to be aware, they also have to be engaged, they have to understand their rights, they have to challenge the claims as well. The data privacy concerns will also arise because sensitive information is being collected. For example, the biometric particulars are also collected. Now, what is the need for the conducting of census? Why do we need the collection of such data? One, the census acts as the authentic data source. It is the most authentic data and it will help in the formation of the planning, policy formation, decision making, as well as the welfare programs implementation. For example, the National Food Security Act or any welfare programs for that matter. It will help in the allocation of grants. For example, the Finance Commission, it allocates the grants to the states based upon the population indicator. There are other indicators also, population being one of the most important indicators based upon which funds are given, distributed among the states. It will help in the demarcation of the constituencies. The seats for the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes are also reserved on the basis of the population data that is also derived from the census. The delimitation of the constituencies, that is also done on the basis of the census data. Therefore, to ensure that there is fair political representation, the census data has to be updated. Likewise, the census data will help in the monitoring of changes. We'll be able to monitor the changes in the demographic indicators. For example, we can monitor the population growth, the changes in the fertility rates, mortality rates, the state-wise data also, the region-wise data will be able to collect and analyze. There is a growing demand for the caste information also, the collection of the caste data in the census as well, that will also be satisfied by the census. Now the census is being delayed. What are the consequences of such a delay in the census? One, it will lead to a delayed delimitation. Still the delimitation of the constituencies, it is working on the basis of the 1971 census. Once the new census is conducted, there can be a fresh delimitation. And the political misrepresentation can be addressed. Again, for example, in the form of the representation of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, their reserved seats, or in some states, there is a faster population growth. So there the number of political representatives that they are sending in the parliament, the number of MPs from a particular state which has witnessed the faster population growth, that is now underrepresented, for example, the northern states. But on the other side, the collection of the latest data in the census may also lead to socio-political tensions. For example, the collection of the data will reveal the faster population growth in the northern states, and the southern states which have implemented the population control measures, for example, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, etc., they will stand to lose out because their number of representatives in the parliament will be dropped, as the population growth there has not been as much as compared to the northern states. Plus, the ineffective policy formulation may be addressed by the latest census. For example, again, the funds that are distributed for the implementation of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, that is done based upon the number of households, the labor in a particular area, and the number of households that will be updated through the updation of the census. The welfare measures will be better targeted through the latest census, for example, the implementation of NFSA again. We'll be able to collect the latest migration data also. We lack the migration data, and the COVID-19 pandemic led to huge flows of migration. The counting of the buildings, houses, etc. will also be updated. Now, what is the way forward? First, we can go for a digital census. We can conduct a digital census. For example, USA did it successfully. We can go for a phased census as well. For example, the collection of the urban census can be done in 2025 and the rural in 2026 if the entire census is not possible in 2025 itself. For example, Brazil did the same in 2022, the phased conducting of census. We can also integrate the surveys data. The multiple surveys are conducted in India, for example, the National Family Health Survey, the Economic Survey. The National Statistical Commission has recommended that we can integrate the data that we collect through multiple surveys as long as the census data is not updated. Then we can follow the recommendations of Justice Rohini Commission also. Justice Rohini Commission had recommended for the collection of the socio-economic data also, the conducting of socio-economic caste census. That will also help in the sub-categorization of the other backward classes, etc. also. Now, there is a previous year question also in the prelims asked related to the census, that is the trends between 1951 and 2001 regarding the density of the population and the annual growth rate of the population. Try to find out the answer for this. There is a mains practice question as well. The census is a critical exercise for policy planning and governance. Discuss the need for census in India, the consequences of its delay, and suggest measures to ensure timely and accurate conduct of the census. Please try to write it. The next article is related to India-France relations. The context behind it is that Prime Minister Modi is on a visit to Paris as the co-chair of the Artificial Intelligence Summit. So we'll discuss the significance of India-France relations and the challenges that the India-France relations face. This is important in GS2 under the topic Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed and Developing Countries on India's Interests. First, let's look at the significance of India-France relations. Historically, France has supported India. In 1984, when we ran out of nuclear fuel for the Tarapur nuclear power plant, France gave us nuclear fuel. USA at the time had backed out, citing domestic concerns. Likewise, France gave us technology also. It transferred the Viking rocket technology in the 1970s. It helped India in our journey for becoming self-reliant in the defense production. Eventually, we signed the strategic partnership as well in 1998. Economically also, France is a significant partner for India. France is 11th largest foreign investor into India. France pumps a lot of investments into India. It has invested more than $10 billion in India from 2000 to 2022. That is the first 2 decades of this millennium. 1.7% of the total foreign direct investments coming into India were from France. Geopolitically also, France has supported India. For example, France has supported India's bid to get the permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council. France has also supported India's entry into the nuclear suppliers group. It had earlier also aided for the India's entry into the missile technology, control regime, Wassenaar arrangement, etc. In terms of nuclear cooperation especially, we have a civil nuclear agreement in place. France was one of the first countries to sign the civil nuclear agreement with India after India conducted the nuclear tests in 1998. We also have the support from France in the form of 6 European pressurized reactors in Jodhpur, and we also have a cooperation agreement in place for the building of the small modular reactors as well. When we look at the defense cooperation, again, France is a significant partner as France was the second largest defense supplier to India from 2017 to 2021. The Scorpion submarines, they were built in India. Not only built in India, there was a technology sharing agreement also put in place since 2005. And we borrow the Rafale fighter jets from France. 3 dozen fighter jets have been delivered already. We have the Tata Airbus partnership also, where the C-95, a tactical transport aircraft, is manufactured through the joint venture. In terms of climate change, there is cooperation between the 2 countries in the form of the Paris Agreement, where both of them are the main contenders, and there is cooperation in green energy as well. For example, the 2 countries are pioneers of the International Solar Alliance also. There is cooperation in the technology sector as well. For example, we have put in place a joint vision for the space cooperation in 2018. We are cooperating in the form of the Trishna, which is the joint Earth observation mission. We have also signed a Horizon 2047 agreement. This agreement focuses upon the cooperation in supercomputing, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and quantum technologies, etc. Last year, Prime Minister Modi invited President Macron of France to be the chief guest of the Republic Day in India, and several agreements were signed. The 2 nations last year agreed for a roadmap for the defense industrial cooperation, which will include the joint designing, developing, and producing military hardware. The agreement included the agreements upon the helicopters, that is, the 2 countries will jointly produce a multi-mission helicopter. Tata and Airbus helicopters will partner to produce the H-125 helicopters in India. The Indian government's PSUs like New Space India Limited and French company Arianespace will cooperate for the satellite launches. Likewise, the French engine maker Safran will transfer 100% technology to build fighter jet engines in India. There were other agreements also which were signed last year, including the activation of 5-year validity of Schengen visas for Indian students who are pursuing their master's degree in France. A defense space partnership was explored. The joint research in clean energy was sought to be deepened. The healthcare cooperation was sought to be expanded, and the collaboration in public administration was also expanded. When we look at the Indian Ocean region especially, the cooperation becomes even more significant. For example, in 2018, we had already put in place the joint strategic vision of India-France cooperation in the Indian Ocean region. We are cooperating in the maritime security sector as well. For example, the conducting of bilateral exercises like exercise Varuna. India participated in the French exercise, the La Perouse exercise also in 2021. It even led to the speculation of the formation of Quad plus France. And the French President Macron even suggested the formation of an axis, the Paris-Delhi-Canberra axis, which will help both India and France also by including Australia as well. France also has a pivot in the Indian Ocean region. The French pivot especially is the Reunion Island. There are multiple French bases, the French military bases in the Indian Ocean region, which India can also use. The agreement to use French bases could ensure that Indian warships will also be able to move across the Indo-Pacific. And French have the bases in Djibouti, Comoro Islands, the Reunion Island especially, and the Indian bases, for example, Assumption Island, Agaliga, Madagascar, Listening Port, Duqm, etc., they will also be benefiting. The engagement in Africa is also significant, since France is the largest European Union trade partner in Africa. 8% of the foreign direct investment going into Africa is coming from France. Therefore, India and France can collaborate by working together in building of infrastructure in Africa. There are some French-speaking countries also, for example, Mali, Togo, etc. There, India will get an added advantage if India wants to venture into those countries. Plus, we can cooperate in the debt relief, since the majority of the African economies are debt-ridden, and we can help them in the capacity building also. We can explore the cooperation in the achievement of sustainable development goals as well. For example, both India and France are pioneering the International Solar Alliance, and 45% of the members of International Solar Alliance are African countries. But the India-France relations, it also faces certain challenges. For example, the geopolitical approaches of India and France, they are a little different. Like in the Ukraine conflict, the France supported Ukraine. It even put sanctions upon Russia, whereas India did not put sanctions upon Russia. We have been importing the Russian oil as well. When we look at the cooperation with China, India has its own concerns. For example, we have our territorial integrity and sovereignty concerns when it comes to the participation with the Belt and Road Initiative of China. India does not become a part of it. Whereas France has deeper economic ties with China. It is building infrastructure projects in Africa along with China. There are certain stalled projects also. For example, the Jatpur nuclear power plant, that was also stalled due to the financing mechanism, due to the localization component requirements put by India, etc. Then there is no free trade agreement put in place. India had explored putting in place a bilateral trade and investment agreement with the European Union, but it was stalled in 2013. The negotiations again resumed in 2022. There is an imbalance of trade also. That is, the export-imports between the two countries are not equal. And there are concerns related to the intellectual property rights also. France wants to protect the intellectual property rights. So what should be the way forward between the two countries? One, we can explore the free trade agreement between India and Europe. France is a part of European Union. The implementation of the agreement on migration and mobility should be done quickly. And India should strive to complete the projects timely, the joint projects between the two countries. There is a means practice question as well. India and France share a strong strategic partnership marked by cooperation in defense, climate change, and maritime security. In light of the evolving global dynamics, examine the significance of this bilateral relationship and the challenges that may hinder its further deepening. Please try to write it. Now, the next article is related to Article 200. This is important in GS2 under the topic Appointments to various constitutional posts, power, functions, and responsibilities. Before coming to the newspaper article, let's discuss what does Article 200 of the Indian Constitution say. As per Article 200, when a bill has been passed by the Legislative Assembly of the state, it shall be presented to the governor. The governor shall have three options. Either he can assent to the bill, or he can withhold assent therefrom, or he can reserve the bill for the consideration of the president. But there is a proviso along with it. The proviso says that the governor may, as soon as possible, observe the words as soon as possible, after the presentation to him for the bill for assent, he can return the bill to the House for reconsideration. The House may reconsider the bill. It can agree to some amendments. It can give the bill again to the governor with or without amendments, and once the bill is submitted again to the governor, then the governor shall not withhold assent therefrom. Now regarding the Article 200, there are interpretations by the Supreme Court. In the state of Punjab versus Principal Secretary to Governor of Punjab, it's a recent case of 2023, the court observed that the governor has to return the bill to the legislature for consideration if he is withholding assent. He can't keep the bill in his pocket. He can't just keep the bill in abeyance indefinitely. He has to take the course of action which is mentioned in the first proviso, that is, he has to give the bill back to the House for reconsideration. And governor is the unelected head of the state. The governor has been entrusted with certain constitutional powers, but those constitutional powers cannot be misused, the withholding of assent that is, and they can't be used to thwart the normal course of lawmaking, that is, he can't keep it in abeyance. There is another case, that is State of Telangana versus Secretary to Her Excellency the Honorable Governor for the State of Telangana. Again, it's a recent case of 2023. The court here emphasized upon the terms as soon as possible, which is mentioned in the proviso of Article 200. The governor has to return the bill to the House for reconsideration, and the governor cannot be at liberty to keep the bill pending indefinitely without any action whatsoever. Now, there is another case which is the backdrop of this, Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India, that is regarding the challenging of the governor's action. Can it be challenged and can it be reviewed by the judiciary? In Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India, the court had observed that the governor does have immunity under Article 361. But this immunity does not prevent the judicial review of the governor's actions. If the governor is withholding assent with malicious intent, the decision of the governor of withholding the assent to a bill can be deemed unconstitutional. The governor must provide valid reasons for withholding assent if he is not giving assent to a particular bill, as the governor cannot act arbitrarily. He has to act within the confines of the law. There is a previous year question also regarding this. Which of the following are discretionary powers given to the governor of a state? Sending a report to the president for imposing president's rule, appointing ministers, reserving bills, making rules to conduct the business of the state government. Try to find out the answer for this. Now, coming to the newspaper article, the Tamil Nadu governor has been withholding assent for the state bills. He has not been giving assent. There has been a prolonged silence on his part. The Supreme Court has criticized him because he has withheld assent for months, years, and later he referred 10 bills to the President of India for consideration. Now, the governor had raised concerns about the constitution of the Search Cum Selection Committee for Vice Chancellors, seeking the inclusion of the UGC nominee also. The Supreme Court wondered, why did you not highlight this earlier? Why have you not been raising this issue earlier? Why are you sitting on the bills? Now, the next article is related to the India-European Free Trade Association Trade Agreement. This is important in GS2 under the topic Bilateral, Regional and Global Groupings and Agreements involving India and affecting India's interests. First, let's look at the EFTA, European Free Trade Association. It's an intergovernmental organization. Why was it formed? It was formed to promote the free trade and economic integration. There are 4 members of the EFTA. The members are Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland. Combined, these 4 countries have a GDP of more than $1 trillion. Therefore, they are significant. And India is the 5th largest trading partner of this European Free Trade Association. And it functions as an alternative trade bloc. That is, at that time, those countries who were not willing or they were unable to join the European Economic Community of that time, they formed this European Free Trade Association. Now, India has signed a TEPA agreement, that is the Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Free Trade Association. What does it say? This agreement ensures that there will be $100 billion FDI coming into India in the next 15 years, and it will help the Make in India project of India. It will create 10 lakh direct jobs for India's workforce. It will ensure better facilities for vocational and technical training in India. Therefore, this trade agreement will ensure that there are jobs being created in India. There is investment also coming into India. There will be technology collaboration across different sectors. So India is lowering the tariffs, but in exchange of that, investment is coming into India. There are tariff concessions related to agriculture and processed food products to boost India's exports also. The growth will be there in industrial exports as well, and there will be greater integration into the global value chains, and there will be better access to the independent professionals and service providers, etc., to the EFTA countries. Now, what is the significance of this agreement with the European Free Trade Association? One, it is setting a new template. It is setting a new template for the other free trade agreements that India may sign in the future. So, we are putting in requirements of investment if we are giving lower tariffs. This is a comprehensive trade pact that India has signed. It will benefit the Indian consumers also, because there are imports of seafood, Swiss chocolates, watches into India. There will be technology transfer as well, because these four countries, they have different domain expertise. For example, Swiss have the expertise in precision engineering, for example, the watches, the premium watches. Norway and Iceland, they have expertise in the production of renewable energy, from which India can also derive benefits, and financial services as well. It will create employment in India, and it will also diversify the import sources for India, because a significant chunk of imports have been coming from China into India. But there are certain challenges of this agreement. One of the major challenges is the tariffs which are imposed upon gold. India imports gold majorly from Switzerland, and it is one of the major products which is imported, and there are no significant reductions in the tariffs which are imposed upon gold. And Switzerland anyway has a policy of tariff-free entry for all industrial goods. Simultaneously, there are known tariff barriers also in Switzerland. They have stringent quality checks. You have to go through approvals to export into Switzerland. And there is an exclusion of the agriculture products, notably some of the agriculture products in the trade agreement, and it may lead to trade distortion as well. If there is no agreement, no free trade agreement between India and European Union, it may lead to trade distortion, because Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, they are part of the European Economic Area, which leads to the free movement of goods, services, capital in the European Union single market. Now, coming to the article, the author argues that the TEPA agreement will benefit both India as well as the European Free Trade Association. For the European Free Trade Association, this agreement will mean the sharing of cutting-edge technologies, innovation, and the expertise with India. For India, it will help in the creation of progressive and sustainable conditions to welcome large-scale investment and collaboration from the four countries. Now, this is unique in nature because the focus is upon the long term. This is not merely a transactional arrangement. Rather, there is a focus upon the mutual growth, and there is the formation of the EFTA desk also, which gives this commitment by fostering connections that will benefit both the economies as well as the societies. The next article is related to the convicted lawmakers. This is important in GS2 under the topic Salient Features of the Representation of Peoples Act. Before coming to the article, let's discuss a couple of provisions of the Representation of Peoples Act 1951. The Section 8 Subclause 3 of the RPA 1951 says that the MPs or MLAs who have been convicted and jailed for the offences for which the punishment is more than 2 years, they will be disqualified. They will be disqualified from holding their seats in the Parliament or the Legislative Assembly, as the case may be. They will also be disqualified from contesting elections for even 6 years after their release from the prison. They won't be able to contest elections for a further 6 years after they are released from jail. And if they are convicted but on bail but having pending appeals, then also they will be ineligible for the contesting of elections. But simultaneously, there was a Section 8 Subclause 4. The Section 8 Subclause 4 provided that the people who have been convicted for such offences for which the punishment is more than 2 years, they can continue to hold their seats in the parliament or the state legislative assembly, provided that they have filed an appeal, and this appeal has been filed within 3 months. This section 8 subclause 4 was found to be unconstitutional. In Lily Thomas versus Union of India, the Supreme Court said that the section 8 subclause 4, it is ultra vires. This is against the constitution, and the legislators, if they are convicted, they will be disqualified on the date of their conviction itself. Even if they have filed an appeal, they cannot hold their seat in the parliament or the state legislative assembly. Immediately disqualified. There are certain issues with this also. The instant disqualification, for example, Rahul Gandhi was instantly disqualified in the defamation case. Later on, the judgment was different. It allows insufficient time for their appeal. Later on, there was a clarification in the Lok Prahari case. The Supreme Court in Lok Prahari versus Union of India in 2018 clarified that the disqualification will not operate from the date of stay of conviction. If the conviction is appealed against, there is an appeal in the appellate court, the appellate court stays the conviction, then the disqualification shall not be operable. Now coming to the article, the Supreme Court has asked, how can the convicted persons be allowed to come back to the parliament? Section 8 subclause 3 disqualifies them for 6 years after they are released from prison, but after the expiry of those 6 years, they can again contest the elections. The Supreme Court has wondered, how are you allowing them to come back to the parliament again? There is an apparent conflict of interest because they have been found guilty of breaking the law. That is why they were punished. And if you are allowing the lawbreakers to contest elections and to become lawmakers again, this is a conflict of interest. The Supreme Court is hearing petitions in this matter which are seeking a lifetime ban on the convicted persons, that they should be barred from contesting elections for a lifetime, whereas the government has filed an affidavit in this regard, and the government has rejected the idea of a lifetime ban on the convicted persons from contesting elections or becoming office bearers of a political party. The government has argued that the period of the 6 years and the prison sentence combined, the 6 years thereafter, this is enough for the legislators, and the MPs and MLAs, they are not bound by specific service conditions. They are bound by propriety, good conscience and the interest of the nation. Therefore, they should be allowed to contest elections after the expiry of those 6 years after they come out of the prison. Now, the next article is related to global warming and La Nina. This is important in GS3 under the topic environment. January 2025 has been one of the hottest Januaries on record. As per the Europe's Copernicus Climate Change Service, the average temperatures were 1.75 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. That is the levels which are calculated on the basis of the average between 1850 to 1900. And this accelerated global warming is happening despite La Nina. It is usually expected that during the La Nina years, the temperatures are slightly cooler. La Nina is one of the phases of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. There are 3 phases: El Nino, La Nina and the neutral phase. During the neutral phase, the eastern side of the Pacific Ocean, that is near the northwestern coast of South America, this is cooler than the western side. The western side is near Philippines and Indonesia. This is because of the prevailing wind systems. The prevailing wind systems move from east to west. They are sweeping the warmer surface waters towards the Indonesian coast. And the relatively cooler waters from below come up to replace the displaced water. Whereas in the El Nino phase, these wind systems weaken, leading to lesser displacement of the warmer waters off the South American coast. Therefore, the eastern Pacific becomes warmer than usual. And the opposite happens in the La Nina phase, that is the trade winds, they become stronger than usual. Therefore, they bring cooler global temperatures by strengthening the trade winds and pushing the waters to the western Pacific. Now, why the La Nina didn't cool the temperatures? One, this La Nina was weak. This was weak because of the delayed emergence. It emerged after September 2024 only, and this led to lesser strengthening, delayed strengthening. The La Nina cycles, they usually peak in the northern hemisphere winter. Therefore, this time they had limited time to strengthen and the phase could not gain enough strength. Therefore, this was a weak La Nina. Plus, the carbon levels in the atmosphere, they have been increasing. High atmospheric carbon levels, they have been exacerbating the warming effects, and La Nina is not able to bring down the temperatures enough. Plus, there has been a reduction in the aerosol levels also. This is curious because there have been clean air policies in some regions, and there the aerosol levels have reduced. The aerosols, they have a different impact. The aerosols have a cooling effect on the atmosphere because they are reflecting the sunlight, and the direct sunlight does not fall on the Earth's surface, hence leading to a cooling effect. Now, what is the significance that we can observe? One, there is a waning of the natural cooling phases. Hence, we need to do something. And there is an urgency of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions also because of the rising carbon levels as well. And we require immediate and effective action on the climate change mitigation. Now, the next article is related to cross blood transplant, as the doctors performed a kidney transplant from a donor who had a different blood group as compared to the receiver. And the receiver had Bombay blood group, which is even more rare. This is important in GS3 under the topic Science and Technology, Development and Applications in Everyday Life. The blood groups have to be same usually when the organ transplants are done because the blood contains antibodies. The antibodies are used by the body to detect and neutralize foreign bodies, while antigens are proteins or carbohydrates which are found on the surface of the red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. They determine the blood type. Now, in this case, there was the Bombay blood group. Bombay blood group is a rare blood group which was first discovered in Mumbai in 1952 by Bende. In normal individuals, the H antigen serves as the base structure for building A and B antigens, whereas in Bombay blood group, the individuals, the gene responsible for producing the H antigen is mutated or absent. So, neither A nor B antigens can be formed. Now, in this case, how was it done? First, a cross blood matching was done by the doctors. This is a procedure developed in Japan. It is done using double filtration plasmapheresis to match incompatible blood groups for transplants. Now, there are challenges in such transplants because the body of the receiver may end up rejecting the organ because the organ belongs to a donor who is having a different blood group. And in the case of Bombay blood group, there are anti-H antibodies. The Bombay blood group individuals produce these and they can reject the organs from anyone with a different blood group. Therefore, the doctors use plasmapheresis. The plasmapheresis is used to remove these antibodies from the blood, and simultaneously immunosuppressants are given. This combined with immunosuppressive treatments is done to prevent the rejection of the organ from the body of the receiver. There is no prior data regarding the handling of anti-H antibodies for the organ transplants. Therefore, this is significant as this is the first known successful kidney transplant from a donor with a different blood group to a Bombay blood group patient. Thank you.